for joining us on another webinar for the Lake Tahoe Regional Transportation Plan. Today we're going to be going over our final draft plan and summarizing all of the input we've heard over the last couple of years from the public and our stakeholders on what their transportation vision for the Tahoe region is. We've all been on plenty of Zoom webinars and calls over the last year, so I won't beat a dead horse on the rules, but please use the Q&A function to submit any questions you have at any time during the presentation. We will be recording the presentation and sending out the recording and slides afterwards. And during the Q&A, if we receive multiple questions about the same topic, we will concisely put those into one question to make sure we get to everything for the panel. And with that, I will introduce our panel for today's webinar. Michelle Glicker, Principal Transportation Planner for the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, Kara Smith, Associate Transportation Planner, and myself, Devin Middlebrook, Sustainability Program Manager. So now to talk a little bit about what the RTP is and our process, I'm handing it over to Michelle.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm thrilled to have the final document out for approval this month. Today, I'm going to walk you through the plan framework, public input, and some of the changes we've made to the plan. The plan can be viewed at trpa.gov RTP, and it has 6 main chapters along with an executive summary and several key appendices. Chapter 1 covers a lot of the metropolitan planning organization role. That's what we have at TRPA, and RTP is the transportation blueprint for our region. It lays out the goals and policies for transportation projects and programs, relies on existing plans, such as our local transit plans, area plans, and even corridor management plans. Each of these inform one another. The planning context in Chapter 2 provides the background on traveler behavior and transportation context in Tahoe. All MPOs must complete a plan every 4 years with a minimum 20-year horizon. That helps to ensure those state and federal transportation funds continue to flow. However, every MPO is not the same. Most plans contain large roadway projects, interchanges. We plan 2-lane roundabouts at most. Our context here is different, with peak congestion hardly occurring during the weekday commute to work, which leads us into Chapter 3, the plan. Kira's going to be diving into the heart of the plan, the programs and the projects that are going to help us relieve that congestion, provide more travel options, reduce GHG, and she'll also cover the expected funding for it. I will then discuss Chapter 5 and 6 as we focus on this plan guiding future implementation. With the relatively short 4-year update cycle, we really never stopped development of the Regional Transportation Plan. About 1.5 years ago, we began updating our public participation plan, reviewing existing conditions, and putting out a survey to the public. January of 2020, we started to get the word out about the plan development, and shortly thereafter, for the spring and summer, moving everything online with several webinars. And online with the exception of distributing some flyers at popular destinations over the summer and some radio ads. All of your input and stakeholder meetings have made this a communities plan. The RTP elevates public desires and needs and triangulates that public input with a coordinated implementation strategy that's been developed with our implementers. It's not just a wish list. We reached over 5,000 participants, including 77% who reside here. Over 55 comments have been received and incorporated into the final draft. Several comments received express the need for getting projects completed faster, the need for more data, and evaluation of our day user impacts. There's been support expressed for more bike and ped improvements, support for exploring on-demand transit shuttles, and the need for evacuation planning. The majority of edits to the document were made in the following sections. Chapter 3, the plan, we added details about the day visitor and expanded details on mobility hubs to make sure it's clear that one size does not fit all. Using roadway adaptive management for not just transit, but emergency response was also included. Chapter 4, funding the plan, adding more details about the development of a new transportation funding with the bi-state partnership. And Appendix B was a project list defining and identifying regionally significant projects, making updates to project costs, and implementation timeframes. And Appendix C, the revenue narrative, we worked with our funding partners to provide the most up-to-date information on revenues which now includes new federal relief funding and recent tax measures. Appendix G, data and forecasting, now includes a more robust section on trip reduction impact and our analysis there. And Appendix I, performance measures, now includes more details on our federal performance measures. Now I'm going to provide you an overview of the final draft. The plan brings a broad approach on what we need and what we're focused on and how we want to achieve it. The elements of the plan, building on projects like the recent trail connecting Incline Village to Sand Harbor. That's a hotspot recreation destination that now is accessible by bike along with bus. Transit, modernizing the system to get to free, frequent, and fun. And technology, really capitalizing on technology tied to travel options, whether it be when the next bus or shuttle will be arriving, or letting you know that the parking lot at Sand Harbor is full prior to your arrival. Corridors and communities is where land use and transportation come together for multimodal planning. So it's not just a single problem being solved, it's along the entire corridor that we look at our planning. This comprehensive planning helps us to align our priorities. Some existing projects like SR 89, Main Street Management Plan, and most recently approved the Resort Triangle Plan. These projects, they benefit our residents and our visitors and are discussed in detail in the plan. Now, our approach to planning is to understand who's moving around in Tahoe. Tahoe travel reveals different user behavior. At the end of the day, we need to address everyone. Each traveler has a unique pattern, and those strategies I just mentioned, they need to be designed for each travel type. Part of that approach and framework for transportation planning is looking at all of our users. Because we are a recreation destination, I mentioned this, right? Typical weekday commute is not the issue. Most of our issues arise on, getting in the wintertime, getting to the ski resorts, in the summertime, getting to those hot spots around the lake. So visitors at the top here, the top two tiers visitors make up the top two tiers. At the top, we have those longer trips coming in from outside the region. 96% of visitors arrive by car. This plan lays out how to increase that 4% non-auto mode share. Not an easy one with, things out of our control outside of the basin, but with committed partnerships, we have included regional park and rides, regional bus connections like the pilot project that's going to connect Reno to Incline. And now, once our visitors are here, the plan includes improving travel by keeping local transit free and making it more frequent. In the middle, we have more recreation trips. This is that internal travel to all of the rec sites. That includes our residents and our visitors. Not doing too bad with over 34% getting around by bike and foot and bus. That is once they're here. This is also where those corridor management plans come in, adding transit options to recreation destinations, paid parking, and managing the roadway. And of course, the base, here is our residents, employees of the region. Right? Those trips include work trips and school trips and errands. 90% are completed by car. So there is a great opportunity for improvements here with better transit, regional commuter routes, as well as connecting trails to popular destinations. This next year, the pilot project for Commute Tahoe, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, we'll be working with our 2 TMAs. That's to reach large and small employers with travel information and incentive ideas. Now, our approach also incorporates tracking the day user. That's a hot topic for revenue discussions as of late, and one section we expanded in the plan since the plan was released. Now, Kira's going to talk to you a little bit more about how we're going to build out our plan, implementation plan with projects and programs.
Thanks, Michelle. So Kira Smith, Associate Transportation Planner with TRPA, and I'll be walking you through some of the priority transportation projects that are included in the Regional Transportation Plan. So the RTP spans 25 years, looks all the way out to 2045. So there are a lot of different projects included in the plan that are intended to improve mobility throughout the region and make it easier for everyone to get out of their cars while also preserving the environment. And so while we were developing the RTP, a group of local and state representatives from the public and private sectors convened a bi-state consultation on transportation to discuss accelerating investments in transportation around the lake. These 4 projects that are shown on the right are some of the higher priority projects that will improve community connectivity, reduce car travel, and prioritize other modes like biking, walking, and transit. So some of the priority transit projects include free local transit, as Michelle mentioned, and you may have noticed that both the TART and TTD transit systems are currently free to the user, and the goal is to continue that long term. And then in the near term, transit will begin serving more recreation hotspots like major beaches and ski resorts. Over time, there will also be on-demand microtransit options around local neighborhoods. There will also be a cross-lake ferry providing water transit between North Tahoe and South Tahoe. And then we'll begin to see some new regional transit services providing options for visitors to get to Tahoe from neighboring cities without their cars. The plan also outlines significant investment in infrastructure for bicyclists and pedestrians, including bike paths connecting Truckee to Tahoe within the Resort Triangle, some sidewalks along Pioneer Trail on the South Shore. And then also on the South Shore, the South Tahoe Greenway will provide a seamless bikeway connection between Myers and State Line with additional connections to local neighborhoods along the way. This year, we're also working on a Tahoe Trails plan with several trail partners around the basin. And the plan will focus primarily on natural surface dirt trails throughout the region. We'll be looking at connections to trails and developing a project list for maintenance projects and possibly some new trail connections. The plan also outlines a $17 million investment in technology projects over the next 25 years, including system upgrades, an integrated regional parking system, traffic management, and transit signal priority investments that will prioritize and enhance the safety of transit, biking, and walking options. The plan also recognizes significant need for maintaining what we've got already, the existing transportation network, including maintenance of local roads and bike paths, plowing bike paths in the winter, and maintaining new complete streets infrastructure. And so the full list of projects included in the RTP can be viewed at trpa.gov/RTP. So implementing the RTP will require significant funding over the next 25 years. Overall, the RTP will cost about $2.4 billion. And the funding for the RTP will include multi-sector contributions from federal, state, local governments, private sector, and regional funding. The funding falls into 2 different categories: assured reoccurring funding and new or anticipated funding from various competitive grants and other unrealized sources. The RTP also includes a recognition of $20 million per year in regional revenue, which could be some sort of tax or transportation fee. The specifics of the regional revenue source are still being worked out through the Tahoe Transportation Implementation Committee, with additional public outreach to follow. So now I'll hand it back to Michelle to take you through performance measures and implementation of the plan.
Thank you, Kara. So I'm going to walk you through those last few chapters of the plan. I've included here one of many policy highlights in the plan. This one, maintain monitoring programs for all modes that assess the effectiveness of long-term implementation of mobility strategies. Chapter 5 of the plan lays out several measures we continue to track over the life of each RTP, and those inform our future projects and our programs needed to achieve our goals. This can be found at Lake Tahoe Info also, in addition to the plan, under the transportation tracker. And that does help us make it publicly accessible. We're going to be building this out even more over the next year. Shown here is mode share. That's data gathered through summer and winter surveys. And we send staff out all over the lake to collect that information. We're continually increasing our non-auto mode share, which is a great thing. Now, VMT, we've been tracking this for some time now. This month, we're seeking adoption of it as a new threshold standard. So the measuring and monitoring Program will be revised to include 2-year reports and adaptive management to keep us on track to meeting those goals. While the compact is clear that we need to reduce reliance on the automobile by providing more transportation options and offering more effective travel choices, we have other goals in our transportation plan that we must achieve as well. Increasing safety and security of the transportation system. That is shown here is the rate of serious injuries. That's one of the safety measures we track. Our projects must be built with all safety measures included, and those past projects should be retrofitted to enhance safety, whether that's adding a bus shelter, adding new lighting, or new crossings. Appendices I includes several more measures we track and that inform our planning. And now our final chapter, moving forward. This time around, we're making the plan more contemporary and focused on implementation. The plan provides a regional approach to mobile source GHG reduction and incorporates new GHG goals of California, as well as supports Nevada state climate strategy. Transportation is a part of the solution. There's broad agreement new funding is needed for transportation, and through the coordination among the bi-state consultation, the Tahoe Transportation District, our local governments, there is significant momentum toward realizing new funding options. The plan includes this as a starting point for the funding initiative underway. The plan includes project priorities that have been identified by the bi-state collaboration, working with our implementation partners, the private sector, and local governments. Priority projects already moving forward include the second phase of SR 28 Corridor Management Plan. That's about parking management along the roadway, and then the trail alignment. And SR 89, the Corridor Management Plan follow-up, is the trail feasibility study that has begun. We leverage new technology and service models in providing transportation options, including travel apps and on-demand microtransit. Lots of lessons learned and success with micro shuttles over the past couple of years. Some of you may be familiar with the Mountaineer Squaw Valley service. This time around in the Regional Transportation Plan, we're folding in the private sector and those partnerships. Along those implementation lines, we have a new transit pilot project commencing this summer. I'd mentioned the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County will be providing transit service that's going to connect Reno to Incline. And that'll be utilizing a reservation system, providing services every day of the week between Memorial Day and Labor Day. This final route and stops of the pilot project are currently being developed. The RTP sets out to increase our private sector partnerships and the role they play. But this isn't just on the transit side of the house. We currently are working with our South and North Shore Transportation Management Associations to work with employers, large and small. The program Commute Tahoe will provide information and tools to our employers to educate them and their employees on travel options, working with the employers to find low-hanging fruit so they can provide incentives to their employees. The first phase of the program has started, and over the coming year is focused on employer participation. And that will conclude with informed updates to the Code of Ordinances. And the second phase of travel management will be focusing on the visitor recreation travel, our program known as Linking Tahoe. Linking Tahoe, which is a one-stop shop for information on transit, and with future build out could include where parking can be found. Some of this is already ongoing with the first phase of State Route 28 inclined to Stan Harbor. The plan enhanced details on recreation travel and access through corridor planning. The plan includes new data sources to better understand behavior. This is built within our analysis and forecast for the plan. It includes parking management, which is about pricing and managing the existing use of the roadway more efficiently. Reservation systems as well. Pricing strategies are being piloted at the Tunnel Creek parking area along the east shore of SR 28. The Resort Triangle Transportation Plan is preparing for a parking pilot to better utilize existing parking focused in their town centers. And US 50 East is gearing up for a corridor management plan that will certainly include parking management. So it's not just the big agencies though. The Tahoe Backcountry Alliance is hopeful to pick up a pilot they previously started. This is a smaller scale private service with vans connecting trailheads on the West Shore. Bottom line though is moving forward will require great collaboration with all of you, our stakeholders, our partner agencies, and those that live and play here. Thank you for your time today. And I think we're going to move now into panel Q&A.
Thank you, Michelle. I know many of you on the call today have heard this in one iteration or the other, so hopefully we added some new information. And with that, please, any questions that you have, you can put those in the question and answer module now, and we will get to them. But to kick off the plan, and it was mentioned, or kick off the panel, it was mentioned a couple times, but either for Michelle or Kira, can you expand a little bit on how this plan addresses the impacts of climate change and how it works towards statewide climate goals?
Sure, I'll start, and maybe Kara, if you want to add. So what the plan, I mean, the main focus of our plan, right, is implementing, achieving our goals. And our goals are broad, but it certainly does evolve around reducing reliance on the automobile, making more travel options, getting people out of their cars, which helps us achieve those GHG goals. Our strategies are broad, right? We look at all of those user types and we think about connecting the trail. And that means connecting the trail, not just around the pretty parts of the lake, but connecting the trail to popular destinations, our regional centers, our town centers. Transit, right? We want to go outside of our region to really help with those longer trips that are taken by car, right? Getting to our visitor before they get here and offering some nice commute options for getting here without a car. So we really tackle it along all of the transit trails, technology, all of that evolves in this next coming year to help us get to reaching those goals.
Great. Next question that popped up. Kira, would you mind explaining a little bit about where you can find Linking Tahoe and what resources you can find while you're there?
Yeah, so our website, linkingtahoe.com, has a bunch of information about travel options to and around Lake Tahoe. Right now, it's just kind of a one-stop shop for all the different travel options, and it will link you out to the different transit schedules, bike maps, schedules for water taxis, that type of thing. And we are planning on building that out a little bit more in the next few years and investing a little bit more heavily into that website. But right now we're just trying to use it as a resource for all the different travel options around the lake.
Great, thanks, Kira. And while I have you answering questions, kind of building off the climate change question, equity is obviously always a big concern when you're talking about those issues. I know this regional transportation plan went farther in that sense. Can you give a little highlight of how environmental justice is being thought of in terms of transportation access?
Yeah, and so we definitely went into more detail on this topic in particular in some of our previous presentations. But specifically, as Devin mentioned, we looked a lot at environmental justice. This plan was really focused on improving access for some of our underserved communities around the region. And so the project list is prioritized primarily by, obviously we'd like to look at visitors, you know, they cause a lot of the congestion issues that we have around the lake, but the plan is really focused on improving access for the locals, in particular neighborhoods where there are a lot of minority communities, low income families, people who don't have access to a car or other mode of transportation. And so there was a lot of analysis that was done. I think Appendix J is the environmental justice appendix, where you can find out some more information about the analysis that we did that informed the project prioritization in this plan. But yeah, our primary goal is to improve access to underserved neighborhoods and then build out regional transportation access and connections.
Yeah, and then actually good transition talking about regional services. There's a question in here talking about the heavy Bay Area travel to the region and asking about the regional bus services between the Bay Area and Tahoe and kind of where those connect in Sacramento and how that travel experience would potentially look in the future. Michelle, I see you unmuted.
I think Kira, one of us, either one, I'll start and I'll let Kira jump in. So yeah, we definitely want to work with our regional partners like Placer County and try to actually build out some park and rides, or even use existing parking lots like the Reno service is going to be using this summer. Using those existing lots to get folks out of their cars before they get to the basin. Let them sit in a luxury bus, not have to worry about the snow or the congestion they might be experiencing. So with our regional partners, we want to build up kind of a regional set of park and rides. Now, along with that is also the information piece, which kind of Kira was getting at, is that portal and working with the, the visitor bureaus and such, so that we're relaying the right information and making sure people understand it's not just coming to Tahoe in a car anymore. There are going to be more options. There's a service, I'm not sure about this year with COVID and changes, but I think it was a care called Envoy or Convoy on the North Shore. You want to talk about that a little bit and their goals?
Yeah, so just to build off of what Michelle said, there's a lot of, our analysis shows there's a lot of visitor traffic coming up from the Bay Area, Sacramento, coming into both North Lake Tahoe and South Lake Tahoe. And so this RTP specifically outlines some different strategies to provide transit from some of those neighboring regions. And, Michelle mentioned working with the neighboring regions to establish park and rides and all of that. And so there are some existing services, primarily private services. Convoy is the name of the one that goes from the Bay Area up to North Lake Tahoe. And I believe it only operates in the winters, just on the weekends. So using that as kind of an example, we'd like to build that out regionally so that there are options into both South Lake Tahoe and North Lake Tahoe, ideally every day of the week, and maybe like once an hour would be great. So that will require some public and private partnerships to accomplish, and that's definitely a priority for this plan.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think that's a good example of how private and public partners coming together can kind of create those holistic services. Going back to the Linking Tahoe question, there was a follow-up just asking if there's an app for Linking Tahoe.
Not yet. That is actually a project listed in this plan. We are hoping to have some dedicated funding to build some sort of app. Not sure exactly what that would look like, but hopefully it would be like a trip planning tool that could connect people to different services. They could book services. They could maybe connect to people who want to carpool. So hopefully we'll have something in the next couple of years that would be ideal. So stay tuned for more on that.
Great. And Michelle, for you, there's a question in here about North Shore Incline Village and the water taxi and how that is potentially represented on some of the maps in the regional transportation plan. Can you just explain a little bit about how it goes from, here's what it looks like on a high level map to what actually goes on the ground for implementation?
Oh, thank you, Devin. That was a great question. One of the things that we want to enhance is the use of water. And so we have proposed smaller taxis to kind of get around some hot spots, and then a larger, very much into the future, a service that would get you across the lake. So one of the questions has come up, Incline has private beaches. So how are you going to make that work? And what I'd like to do is kind of take a step back and let you think about the regional transportation plan itself. We love it as an implementation plan. We love to kind of spring forward off of this plan and enhance and actually implement all of these projects. But what it is not is a detailed plan for every transit hub or every pier that's going to serve a water taxi. So those things still have to be figured out and planned and public outreach conducted. But the importance here is that even though it's a private beach, it's important that some of those residents who have access to that private beach can use the water taxi, right? Can also have an option. So there are things that have to be worked out, making sure that randoms don't come off the water taxi and, go onto those private beaches. But the fact is the transportation plan just lays out increasing options, and those details have to be worked out. But we wouldn't want to just leave Incline off of a map just because we have to work through that.
Thanks, Michelle. The next question for either of you, whoever wants to jump in is around infrastructure. And it comments that the plan is very dependent on technology and connectiveness. How does that infrastructure, and I'm assuming, you know, broadband is probably one of those big pieces, but how does that underlying infrastructure get addressed through the regional transportation plan?
I would say through a lot of the policies. There are a handful of projects in there, but this is definitely something we want to build out more, and we know that it is reliant upon technology and advancements. Kira mentioned, you know, the dollar values that have been designated for those technology projects. We talk a lot about our policies as well that support things like dig once. Some of the things that are in the infrastructure side, right? Helping ensure that those routes are there when the technology does come. We also are coordinating a lot with our partners. We have a particular plan that needs to be updated that also addresses technology. So while it does seem like there's a lot of reliance, there's also a lot of movement that's happening. And some of those technology projects even include signal, you know, synchronization that's going to be happening on the South Shore. And we've been waiting for that for some time to come. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I know, and maybe Kira, just to add on to that, kind of what are those infrastructure needs when we start talking about new emerging mobility and micro shuttles and scooter shares and ride share and autonomous vehicles? Like, how are we keeping an eye on that for the future?
Yeah, you know, a lot of those new emerging modes rely on using apps, mobile apps. Like we've already seen it with Lime, and even some of the microtransit pilots that we've had. They rely on people going onto their smartphones, opening up an app, and booking a trip or renting a scooter or something like that. So we know that we have broadband issues around the region, and there are certainly places that have more dead spots than other places in the region. And so that's why you see this $17 million investment in technology improvements included in this plan, because in order for these things to work around the region, and in order for us to actually have these options and provide some of these micromobility options, we do have to improve broadband. So yeah, the investment is there, definitely.
Yeah, a couple more project-specific questions. Whoever's best for them can jump in. I think in regards of the Mount Rose shuttle route between Reno and Incline Village, I think a spinoff of that, this person is asking if the parking lot at Mount Rose Ski Resort was looked at in the summer for a park and ride, and I think that can probably be expanded generally to all the ski resorts when those giant parking lots are unused in the summer.
Yeah, so for the transit pilot specifically from Reno to Sand Harbor over Mount Rose, I think Michelle mentioned it. That will be a pilot starting Memorial Day this summer and going through Labor Day. And we're still working very closely with the Washoe RTC to figure out specific stops for that route. And so I don't know if it'll be an on-demand shuttle, so there's no set schedule with, you know, stop locations identified, but we're looking at hoping to stop at some trailheads along Mount Rose, as well as going to Sand Harbor. And I certainly think we could look at potentially stopping at Mount Rose, but the details of that are still kind of being worked out.
And then sticking on the East Shore in that area, this question is if there's any immediate plans on Highway 28 on the East Shore, North Shore to be safer this summer. And I know a few things that are going on and that I can add if you want me to. Yeah, I know that Washoe County Sheriff is increasing their staffing levels at the lake. So they will be having additional staff that'll be monitoring, especially the East Shore corridor. So there'll be additional highway patrol or county sheriff staff along that corridor. I believe they are still planning on having the very high $300 to $500 ticket parking prices for parking. There's a number of agencies around the lake that are working on trailhead ambassador programs to educate the public. So I'm sure that is one of those hot spots that will have volunteer staff on site. And then I know they're also adding additional signage to make it very clear in certain areas about no parking, parking fines, and litter. So Washoe County is putting additional resources into that corridor this summer. Kira, you, yeah.
Well, also just to really quickly add to that, you know, the TTD runs the East Shore Express from between Incline Village and Sand Harbor in the summers. They did not operate that last summer due to COVID, but it will be back this year. So hopefully that will kind of help alleviate some of the parking and congestion issues that we're seeing along the 28 corridor.
Yeah, and then Kira, you talked in your slides about the funding and how the funding works and that funding gap. This question is, you know, how are those shares of estimated shares of funding determined? You know, how do you determine how much is private versus how much is local governments versus how much is regional? I guess maybe Michelle or Kira.
I'm happy to take that one. In the appendices, you actually can find so much more detail than in the plan itself. And so we have over 50 some sources. And what we do really is mine our past and our future. We look at the sources we've had in the past that have been utilized for projects. And we also, as I mentioned, new tax measures and other things are folded in. So in that appendices, sorry, I don't have it offhand. It's early on, maybe D. In that appendices, you can find that. And so what we do is we look at those dollars that are expected, that have been in the past, that are secured, and those in the future. And that's what actually makes up that chart and that table. And so we've identified them under different categories for local and regional, federal and state. And then that's how we formulate that. Now, the Regional Transportation Plan is not a, what do I want to say? It's a good guide for the future. And it's what we have to do every 4 years, is to look at that and make a solid plan of expected expenditures, expected revenues, and what we want to get to. And that's why it is every 4 years that we'll go back in and update all of those sources and what we received, to kind of keep it a living document, keep things moving, and keep implementation going.
Yeah, the revenue narrative is included in Appendix C.
Yeah, but I think generally, as Michelle said, it's money that we know we're going to get because we get it every year. It's projects that we know have coming that are already funded. It's our ability to have, you know, local tax revenue. So a little bit of backcasting with a little bit of forecasting. And then obviously then there's the gap. This question kind of builds off of the question earlier about Convoy and some of the regional transit services, just other concrete ideas that help limit the number of cars coming into the basin. I think, you know, our whole regional transportation plan and most of it kind of aims at reducing the number of cars coming into the basin, but I don't know if Michelle or Kira, you wanted to point out a couple of the other priority projects that'll help reduce that. I know Placer County and their Resort Triangle Transportation Plan has some exciting things coming up in it as well.
Sure, you can go ahead.
You know, on that note, I don't want to forget the question, Devin, but one of the things that we've also done in this plan is really connect more to Truckee in the plan. It wasn't that we weren't doing that work, but now we're identifying it. And it is that Placer County Resort Triangle Plan that helped us do that. Truckee connections mean light rail from Sacramento. And so there are other options outside of transit trails and technology that are in there to help us kind of push some of that forward. And so we are working on a larger scale with the state to see what we can do to actually increase some of that passenger service. The Resort Triangle Plan, definitely awesome plan that's being implemented like right out of the gate with some of these parking pilots I mentioned. They're getting really innovative too and thinking about those transit pilot projects, like using micro shuttles right into some of their neighborhoods. So I mean, as I said, the plan really doesn't stop. It's every 4 years and we're updating it, but we're updating it on all of these great things that are happening and they inform one another. Did that get to it? Did I miss something?
Yeah, I think you mentioned, you know, rail service and trying to get increased passenger rail service is one of those big ones.
Yeah.
I think our regional transit. Yeah, Kira?
I can also just add to that, you know, I think a lot of maybe the issue right now is that people come to Tahoe because they in their cars because they don't know how they can get around once they're here. So a big part of this plan identifies, our travel demand management strategies, which I talked about Linking Tahoe earlier, but it's really just pushing out the information that's included on Linking Tahoe to more people around the mega region. So people in the Bay Area, in Sacramento, intercepting them before they come to Tahoe and letting them know that they do have options to get around in Tahoe without their cars. So there's a lot of strategies that identify just pushing out information and just letting people know they do have options other than their car.
Yeah, I think a lot of the messaging and getting people to change their behavior is a big one. We talk, or in the basin, housing has been a very important and relevant subject in recent years and very recently. How does the regional transportation plan and transportation projects, how do they support affordable and workforce housing in the basin?
I think it's almost, yeah, they are kind of a married thing, because one of the things that we want to ensure is when we're putting in these larger affordable housing projects, that they are connected to our trails and our transit. And we're lucky right now. We have one project in the pipeline, which will be at kind of the top of Ski Run there. And so we already have good bus service. And so it's really important. They have to work together. And in the document, you'll see we have a forecast. And so we're looking at, future housing and where it should be. But the connection there is a good one. There's another potential affordable housing site at the Y, and a part of that project will be along US 50 facing it. And so there's a new trail that's already planned there. So that project will have trail access, as well as be near a key hub right at the Y for transit services. So we really try to ensure that when those projects are coming online, that they incorporate all of those great things, whether it's the transit services nearby, or even some things on site are going to be required, where they want to work at, whether it might be just providing a bike share or a car share program to their employees. Their residents, that they, that they're a part of the solution. And that also means potential for getting folks who have to live outside of the basin back into the basin where they work. And so that's another piece of this is really helping us with those longer trips that are made here, because people can't afford to live and work here at the same time.
A couple more questions popped in about rail service. We talked, mentioned briefly rail service from the Bay Area to Truckee. Is there any conversations on the other side of the basin and going from Truckee to Reno? And then what does kind of that work look like? I know rail is very complicated and bureaucratic. Like, how is our agency in the Tahoe region, how are we actually trying to push rail service?
Yeah, we've actually been utilizing the bi-state consultation, right? Who have the two natural resource agencies, the DOTs of the states coming together. We've been working with the two states on their rail plans to ensure that Tahoe is on the map, and Truckee is a part of that. So it's not easy and it's not sexy because there are a lot of players in the game, and there are a lot of things that rail serves other than just our residents. I think it was last summer we met and we worked a little bit with the folks who are developing the new rail plan for Nevada. And so we talked a lot about, those connections and the importance of it. So we have a lot of plans in play, but that there is a lot of collaboration that goes above and beyond TRPA that is needed. And so that bi-state consultation has been instrumental in helping us kind of push that narrative.
Great, looking in here, if anyone else has, let's see, this one just came in. This question is about, the operation and costs of a potential Cross Lake ferry, and, the way-offs in terms of costs, and I'll add really policy as well in terms of, where do you invest, the ferry versus roadways. And I think you mentioned at the beginning of the webinar about our policy about not building new roadways. So Michelle, I don't know if you can comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's an important one. We have mostly on the unfunded side of the plan is the Cross Lake Ferry. And so we've included some funds on the constrained side to further that planning work. It's not an easy decision, but it's really also public input that we gather, and that helps us adjust those priorities and what's funded and what's unfunded. The expectation of funds if of certain projects moving a little bit faster. So it's not, it's not exact science that we have to go through, but we do have to look at expectations, what the public is also commenting about and the needs of them and achieving our goals ultimately. So it's not an easy one, but if you look further into the plan, you'll kind of see where the priorities are shifting, and that's a lot towards transit this time around. And as you've just heard, how do we reach those regional trips? How do we change that behavior? It's a lot through public transportation and information. And so it is a bit of it's an iterative process with the public and our stakeholders that helps us develop that plan.
Yeah, and I would just add that the bi-state compact that created the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency and the Metropolitan Planning Organization and really set this path of environmental protection for Tahoe does outline kind of pretty boldly that new roadways aren't being constructed, and there's not going to be massive expansion of our roadway network. I think some smaller projects you saw, like the Tahoe City Y project, does provide some new roadways to relieve that congestion, but overall, it's a mixing of all of those strategies. Kira, a question came in specifically kind of around bike parking. And is there a policy or requirement that new projects need to add bike parking to them? And then maybe you can comment a little bit on what the Bike Coalition's done with bike racks and bike parking in the last several years.
Yeah, and actually Michelle might be able to answer this question too, some of the project impact analysis work that's going on, but definitely through our Commute Tahoe program, which is focused on businesses. We're targeting employers specifically and trying to get them to provide incentives or options for their employees to bike, walk, or take transit to work instead of drive alone. And so by providing bike parking on site, that they would be encouraging their employees to bike to work. And certainly if it's safe, bike parking is a priority. So through that program, we're kind of encouraging that. And then Michelle can talk maybe a little bit about specifically new projects.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, right? Not all MPOs have get to kind of facilitate a project impact analysis. That's generally not what a regional agency does, but in Tahoe, the other side of the house, right, at TRPA, we actually can. And so we're connecting it closely to the regional transportation plan. And what Kara was speaking of is not, along the lines of updating a threshold, we are also updating our project impact analysis work. And so we're tying it now to vehicle miles traveled. We're producing a nice new online tool for all of those who propose projects, and that tool will help people understand what are the things they can build into their project, like bike parking, that can help reduce VMT. And so we're going to be doing probably this month as well. We'll be seeking some recommendations on that and developing and kind of pushing out that tool to help folks. And so it's, is your site located near transit, right? Do you have bike parking on site? Do you offer, certain things for your employees? So it goes from private to commercial sites and really thinks about all of the development and the ways we can develop things better to reduce vehicle miles traveled.
Great. And then actually this might be a good transition as we're running up against the timeline on our webinar, but this person just asked for some clarification on what we mean by final draft plan. We've had a draft plan, now we have a final draft plan, and then eventually we'll have a final plan. Like what are those semantics and what does that look like? And I see you pulled up the next slide, so it'd be great if you wanted to touch on this as well.
Sure. So what we produce a draft plan and we get that.
Oh, camera down.
I got a little excited there. It's kind of messy. All right, we're back. We produce a draft and then we seek public input on that draft. And then incorporating all of those changes, as I mentioned today, we then prepare a final draft for recommendation. So this schedule here shows you where we're going to be going this month. So you'll have an opportunity if you want to tune in to these commission meetings to also make public comment. We'll be seeking recommendation at the Tahoe Transportation Commission this Friday. And so that's kind of how it works. So it's a final draft until it's approved on the 28th at our governing board. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that was helpful. And then I think, yes, for everyone listening to the webinar, thank you again for joining us. We will be sending out the recording and slides. Afterwards, everyone's also been added to our transportation email list to stay up to date. Obviously, we are coming to the conclusion of the Regional Transportation Plan update, which happens every 4 years. So we'll be back around in the next couple of years doing this whole process over again. But that doesn't mean that the public's opportunity and potential for input is over for the next 4 years. There's a continuation of projects, and as we move from that overall transportation vision towards implementation and those finer details and exact project locations and project design are developed, there's ample opportunities for additional public input. And we wanted to just highlight a few of those that are upcoming this year that I know people are interested in, or if you haven't heard of them, would be good to keep on your radar. That includes along the State Route 89 West Shore, the Tahoe Trail feasibility study. So that is the bike trail that would be completing the Tahoe Trail, which now ends at Spring Creek Road in South Shore near Baldwin Beach, and Meeks Bay along the West Shore. So closing that last gap of the trail and some of the improvements that go along with that. As part of our Regional Transportation Plan implementation, partners around the basin create corridor management plans. We have one for State Route 89. There's the Resort Triangle Plan for Placer County and the North Shore, 28 for Incline Village and the East Shore. The Nevada Department of Transportation will be kicking off their US 50 East Shore Corridor Management Plan, which goes from about State Line in the South Shore up to Spooner Summit, really looking at safety improvements where there's a lot of crashes and fatalities that happen in that corridor. So a very important aspect of that plan. And then as Kira mentioned, the TRPA, Tahoe Fund, Forest Service, and a variety of other partners this year we'll be working on creating the first ever Tahoe Trails Master Plan, looking at natural surface dirt trails, hiking, biking, equestrian, all the dirt trails in the Tahoe Basin, and better coordinating those activities, and then updating that along with our active transportation plan, which looks at all of our paved trails. So having that complete trail picture in the Tahoe Basin, and all of this and more can be found on our new home webpage, trpa.gov/transportation, trpa.gov/transportation. Thank you all for attending this webinar, and have a wonderful rest of your day.